Hi everyone, welcome to Bones and Stones. Today we've got a friend of ours who's currently based in Lesotho, sitting on top of a mountain to get good enough signal to talk to us, Len van Schalkwyk. As you can see, he's looking very relaxed, wearing my only bra on days. I can't see the rest of the shirt, but it sounds good to me. And I know off the screen he's got something else that's helping him relax as well, something cold that we can't get here. But Len, thanks very much for joining us. And maybe just to kick things off, if you could give us a bit of a background to your story, where you've come from and how you ended up in CRM.
Yeah, Tim, I think I have an indebtedness to my my parents, who were great travelers. We traveled extensively as kids all over South Africa. My father was a Takkies graduate, in fact took classes with Prof. Hannes Elof. My mother was a Wits sociology, anthropology major, and I suppose from a very young age, I was exposed to the diversity of culture in South Africa. As I went through my school career, I actually decided in Standard 3 I was going to be a game ranger, and I pursued that, all the way through to my matric year. However, I was also very fortunate to have David Lewis Williams as my English master at Kersley College, and from that there was a further instilling of an interest in rock art, particularly there, but in archaeology in general. I went to Stellenbosch University to study nature conservation. I transferred at the end of my first year due to somewhat lacking in chemistry, physics, and mathematics, to archaeology, and I married two passions in the department with Hilary Deacon. He had established a paleoecology unit, and there my interest in wildlife, in biodiversity, and the environment married very nicely with obviously a latent but passion about cultural history and people. I was very fortunate in that at the height of the military conflict in Angola, my mother wanted me to leave the country or join the end conscription campaign. Refugee status and or jail didn't appeal to me, and I managed to get a non-combatant job in the army, and I took over from Jannie Loubser on a project that had been started by Tim Maggs at the Natal Museum in the Tugela Valley, excavating and surveying early Iron Age sites that potentially were going to be inundated by a dam that was going to be built on the Tugela. The dam has never been built, but suffice to say that I ended up spending 27 months under canvas in the Tugela, and came out with the field work done, which allowed me, over, lest I say it, the next 11 years to slowly write up a master's degree. I think Gavin Whitelaw and I have the record in South Africa for the two longest master's degrees. But anyway, I completed mine 2 weeks before our first child, our daughter Mika, was born. But over that 11 years, I remained in cultural management. I was appointed to complete the excavations of King Cetshwayo's royal residence Wandini, and establish the site museum, and parallel with that, established the KwaZulu Cultural Museum. So the 11 years were not spent idle. I had to try and write a thesis up while holding a full-time job in the old KwaZulu homeland. Subsequent to that, and during that period, I did now and again do some contract work. The Natal Museum had established a CRM unit, and I worked together with Gavin Whitelaw over the years, while we both held professional positions within our respective institutions. But it gave me a taste of what was out there. I was appointed assistant director to the newly formed AMAFA KwaZulu-Natal, which is an amalgamation of the National Monuments Council and the old KwaZulu Monuments Council. Transferred to Pietermaritzburg and then in an administrative position. I thought that maybe I had a career in heritage management, via administration within a within a provincial heritage agency. It was not to be. I became increasingly frustrated in the admin world, and in 2000. Beth Vaal, who was the archaeologist in the department, and I jumped ship, and I'm forever indebted to her for having jumped with me onto a not very stable raft. No guaranteed monthly income, no paycheck at the end of the month, no medical aid, no housing subsidy. And so with a little Lada Niva with 100,000 miles on the clock, a desktop each and a laptop each, and each with a GPS, we established eTheMbeni Cultural Heritage. And we've been going for, eTheMbeni is now 21 years old. Beth left the company in 2014. She married and went to go and raise her children. And I've flown solo since then. And I've managed to make a living and also, continue to feed and fuel my passion for heritage management and also for involvement in research. Let me just say that out of my Ndonondwan experience in the late 80s, in 1995, we were appointed by Department of Water Affairs to go back. There was some water augmentation scheme that was going in, and on the site of Ndonondwan, they wanted to establish the field camp, the construction camp. So we had a rescue archaeology mission. Because of faction fighting in the area, the camp was never established on the Ndonondwan site. But what it led to was a collaboration with my University of Manitoba in Canada, and it's really gratifying that 25 years later, I still have a research collaboration with the archaeology and anthropology department at University of Manitoba. A number of students who came to work on the site as undergraduates or as honors students are today professors and associate professors in North American universities. So it's been a beautiful journey in terms of that collaboration. And yes, so I now, I find myself 21 years later continuing, and with CRM, I think I've been able to establish myself provincially with KwaZulu-Natal, although I work extensively in the Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga and the Free State as well. But it's been a bumpy ride, but an incredibly gratifying ride.
No, thanks, Len. That's really interesting. Yeah, you've sort of gone through a lot of different phases, and then obviously ending up in CRM. And I know Matt Lotter's got a question about that. Matt, just hang on, just check. I think you muted.
You've muted.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I actually muted earlier because the dogs were having a conversation outside. Sorry about that. Len, thanks so much for that. I mean, it really seems like you've had a very interesting journey in archaeology, and I think something which would be very interesting, at least for some of our young archaeologists or people studying archaeology, the people that are listening and watching. Could you maybe identify 2 or 3 points that one should consider? If somebody young is considering a career in archaeology, you've obviously had a lot of experience starting your own company, running that for over 2 decades now. What are the kind of survival skills you could suggest? The newbie's guide to getting into CRM archaeology. What are the most important things that you could identify? Maybe skills to develop, things to consider.
Matt, yeah. Let me say at the outset, I served an extensive term on the ASAPA Council, and I was involved with the old SA3 Council as well. And there's been this continual call over the years for CRM to absorb the graduates that were coming out of universities who weren't going to work in museums, stay on in universities, work for provincial heritage agencies, and that type of thing. And the one thing that I would like to say is that lower your expectations. A environmental practitioner who I've worked with now for 2 decades established himself as well in around about 2000. And we were having a beer one day, and he said to me, "Oh, welcome to the world of feast and famine." He said, "Where the feasts are few and famine is the norm." And you know, that is one thing that you have to accept. I can tell you that now, that there is nothing like steady income. You have to build yourself a buffer. And you know, I'm trying to be sagely now and say this, but I've actually never achieved it myself. But one has to try and build up a financial buffer of at least 3 months income if you want any kind of stability. I can tell you that for the first 5 years, there were contracts where we would sleep in the back of the Land Cruiser because we couldn't afford the B&B, and rather put that money into the diesel to be able to go and do the field work and get back and write the report. The other thing to realize is that, you know, clients are notoriously slow in paying, and you should work on the possibility quite easily of 120 to 180 days before you get your check paid. So it's not all plain sailing. The work is great. It's fantastic. You're in the field. You're getting around. You see the country. You sit around at a braai with your friends, and they think you've got this, you know, this amazing job where you're not tied to 9 to 5, and you, as I very often say, is that we get paid to go to places that other people paid to go to. Yes, there's a truth in that. There's, and I suppose it's my love of reading landscape and being in new and interacting with different communities that continues to drive me. But it's not easy. And increasingly over the last 20 years, you know, there are more CRM operatives out in the field who have established themselves. So competition is out there as well. You have to work with a sharp pencil when you're submitting your cost proposals.
Yeah.
Let me not put people off.
Yeah.
Let me not put people off. There are gaps that are there, and you know, very often there are requests from us to take on interns, and you know, as a well, for the last 6 years now, as a one-man band, I found that very, very difficult. You know, a lot of graduates come out and have this expectation that there's going to be a salary. You know, I personally could not afford to employ somebody and offer them a salary. I would possibly be able to offer a retainer, but you know, there's a requirement from people wanting to come in to, you know, actually come in with their own vehicle, for example, to have a laptop, to have a GPS, and so that you can make a contribution to the company, but also, you know, you're going to wait for your full pay until I get paid by the client. So those are some of the realities out there.
Yeah, I've heard quite a few students comment before, you know, when chatting about careers and what do you want to do with archaeology, where do you want to go? And a lot of the time I've heard people say, well, then if I can't get a job, I'm going to go into CRM. And I think this sort of story is a really good thing to mull over, because it isn't a case, like you say, it's not a case of walking into CRM and having a salary. It's actually pretty difficult to get into CRM and to get that money to come in and sustain your lifestyle.
No, absolutely, Tim. I mean, I think that you and Matt, you know, you yourselves have had that experience at, you know, at the beginning of your, you know, of your careers, and let's not post doom and gloom out there. It certainly is, and there are some larger companies that are able to to pick up interns, and there are there's some of the bigger engineering and project management companies that have over the years appointed archaeologists or heritage practitioners onto their staff. There certainly are gaps, but the kind of pressures that we've been under, over the last decade of, sort of blanketly, can you please try and absorb the excess coming out of the universities? I think that's pie in the sky. I really do.
Yeah, for sure. I think, I know we had a discussion earlier as well about, the universities training up archaeologists to as academics, as opposed to moving into contract fields, which is another issue that I think a lot of people face, is that shift, that transformation that needs to take place, going from a more academic-y background into a more contract-based background. But Len, I think we're sort of running out of time there, but thanks very much for joining us. We appreciate it. I know you can see you in your car there, and I know you're on top of a hill, and we really do appreciate it. We're very jealous that you have the freedoms you do at the moment, and parking off next to a river and so on as well.
Well, yes, and thank you guys for the opportunity. And I am sitting in a very beautiful place at the moment, doing incredibly exciting work. So it's great. All will be revealed in the course of time.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and just for you and Matt, the Mogotlong is flowing beautifully.
I don't want to know.
At the moment.
I don't want to know. As far as I'm concerned, it's dry and there's no fish in it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thanks, Len. We'll chat to you soon. We appreciate it, and stay safe out there. And enjoy the weekend.
Thanks very much.
You guys be well.
Okay, cheers,
Thanks again. Pleasure.